And did I lose the window? Probably.
It is saying live though.
It is. We're very live. I just think I lost the Instagram one. Let me try it again. Hey, hello to the audience while I figure this out. Um, all right, just give me 2 more minutes. I think I got it. And maybe? Yeah, we're good now. Okay. Thanks everybody for your patience while we got Instagram going. I'm Janet Pope, very excited to be on another session where we're going to explore what it would look like to feel prepared and not panicked when your role ends or your career shifts. We want to talk through how to navigate job changes, career pauses, and finding new opportunities, really trying to make sure we understand how to navigate career uncertainty and position ourselves for what's next with some clarity. We'll focus today's conversation on real life examples, providing general education, not individual career advice. And this session is absolutely for you if you're looking for guidance, reassurance, or simply a place to start to feel more informed as you navigate a career pause or a job search. I'm excited to have two of my favorite people in this conversation. That's called the New Job Market Playbook, and how we can just prepare and pivot for what's next. Before we dive into any topic, any conversation, exploring any of our points of view, let me just give my normal disclaimer. So, the views and the opinions expressed on this webinar are those of the individual speakers and do not reflect any official position with any company, organization, employer, or other agency for which they have an affiliation. This content is intended for informational and edutainment purposes only. All right, now that that's out of the way, let's make sure that we go into some introductions so the audience knows who is a part of this conversation today. So, Mikaela, let's start with you.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I am Mikaela Ramsden, a proud Trini, living in the States though for most of my life at this point, all of my adult life. I am a former HR leader who got burned all the way out and took a sabbatical and thought I was going to go back to an HR career and then realized that's not what I wanted to do. And I did some HR consulting, and now I am a sabbatical coach helping other people figure out how to take time off in an intentional and meaningful way to recover from some of the corporate PTSD that many of us are experiencing.
Awesome. Damon, over to you.
Sure. Thank you so much. Well, thank you for having me. I'm Damien Howard. I'm the founder and CEO of Grant Wagner Talent Solutions. I've spent more than 2 decades in workforce development, executive search, and talent strategy, partnering with Fortune 5 and 1,000 companies, government agencies, and nonprofits to help organizations build high-performing teams while helping professionals navigate career transitions. One thing I've learned is that the labor market is constantly changing, but opportunity never disappears, it shifts. So the people who thrive aren't always the most talented. They're the ones who recognize those shifts early and position themselves ahead of them. And I'm looking forward to sharing some practical strategies that anyone can use regardless of where they are in their career. And a little bit more about me. I am a relationship person, so I believe in authenticity and transparency, and I promise you're going to get a lot of that today. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent. We have the right two people, that I know for sure. And again, just thank you for being here. Really excited. And I know that this is a timely conversation, and we absolutely want the tools, the tips, and the practical advice. So let me first just find out who's in the audience. If you're on YouTube, if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on Instagram, just say some things in the comments so that we know you're there and we can say hello to you. And while you're doing that, I want to dive into what I think is honestly the question of the moment. So we know that Black talent specifically is experiencing rising unemployment rates across industries, across education levels, and across professional tenures. In a market where so much feels unpredictable, what does it actually look like to stay ready? You know how we say, so you don't have to get ready, and really be prepared for impacts to your current role. Mikaela, let's start with you.
All right. I love that phrase, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And I liken it to, the fire drills we all did in school or we do in our office buildings. So we know exactly what to do if a disaster happens. It's basically the same thing, but for our lives. So um, a lot of people, not all, but many, tend to run their financial lives and their careers a bit reactively. And I think the thing that is always important to remember is that companies do not, right? Your employer has a financial plan, they have a workforce plan. When they're preparing for layoffs, it's not usually from one week to the next, it's many months of planning in advance. And so what I encourage people to do is to do the same thing for themselves, right? Especially in today's environment, the importance of understanding that, the job may feel secure or not, but you just never know. And being the person who, unfortunately, in my HR career was on the other side of delivering those conversations to people, I got to see firsthand over 2 decades how the emotions and the difficulty when people receive that news, folks who were ordinarily composed and sometimes have big jobs, and you start to see the physiological reactions that they're having, and it is absolutely heartbreaking to see. And the thing that I want to, first of all talk about is just understanding from a practical perspective what your finances are, your personal finances. Know what your financial floor is. So it's not like, oh, I have some savings, I'll be all right, but it's actually knowing the dollar amount of your essential expenses. And this is going to sound a lot like, I don't know, the budget bros. I don't want it to be that, right? This is not about stripping the joy out of life. I don't believe in that. But if for a season of time you may have to do things differently, whether it is to prepare to be able to have extra funds to prepare yourself for a potential layoff or after a layoff, then sometimes it just requires us to do something different. So taking the time to, if you've not done this already, understand your essential expenses versus your non-essential expenses, right? So rent and mortgage, essential expense. Food, essential expense. 5 streaming platforms, maybe not all essential, and you can bring that down. And again, I don't want to take anybody's joy away from them, but sometimes it's just what you have to do temporarily. And getting real with yourself about, should something happen, should you lose your job, what are the bare minimum expenses that you have to maintain and how much that cost. So either you can take a look at what you have saved. And if you don't have it saved, and I know that this comes with a lot of emotions, right? Because money is a very emotional thing for a lot of people. It gives you a starting point to say, okay, if the amount of money I need to have to cover my basic expenses for, say, 6 months, I don't have it, you at least know the number as a starting point, and then you have something that you can back into and begin to work towards very, very, very clearly to get there. So it's not an answer people always like to hear because it requires sometimes doing difficult things, but it is the very, very first place to begin. The second thing that I like to tell folks to do is to understand what you're entitled to as far as your company benefits before anything happens. So some companies have a severance policy, and it may be called something else. It may be called like a layoff policy, some language that sort of is around that, right? Where they speak very specifically to it could be based on your years of service, you get X number of weeks of pay, etc. And they're not required to have this, and not all companies are going to have it. But it doesn't hurt for you to go and take a look on your company intranet, your HR policy site, whatever the case may be, and see if they have one. And this way, you know what's listed in the policy. So should something happen, you can already kind of do the math on what you will be entitled to. If one doesn't exist, that's it's not the end of the world. When a mass layoff is happening, there's some kind of math that goes into the equation for how to distribute the severance packages, and they will typically explain that to you. The other thing is to take a look at your pay stubs. A lot of people don't look at their pay stubs, especially if you're getting direct deposit. I'm sure some folks who are listening here, they'll be like, oh, it's been months. You haven't looked at it since you got your salary increase in February. I bet you. I bet you. So take a look at your pay stubs so you're really, really clear on what you're paying for in terms of benefits, right? You probably signed up for your benefits during open enrollment last November, and you've just been doing the same thing every year, and you kind of don't really remember what you signed up for. Get really clear on what you're paying for, and this will give you a clue as to what things you can leave. If your job ends, what things won't continue from your employer, what things you will be responsible for continuing. So, for example, if you are paying health insurance, getting your health insurance through a company, they pay a portion, you pay a portion. If you lose your job, you're eligible in the US for COBRA, and you have a short period of time after you are laid off to sign up for it. And typically it's for 18 months, but you have to pay the employer portion, your portion, plus an administrative fee. So that also allows you to kind of figure out the math on, okay, add that to the equation of if I'm going to need to do COBRA for, your benefits, your family's benefits, what does that math look like? The other thing that a lot of people don't realize is some of the benefits are portable. So things like life insurance, if you have life insurance through your organization, oftentimes you are able to continue that with you again, paying the full premium. And that's really important if you're in a situation where, let's just say you have some health issues. You don't typically have to have evidence of insurability through your employer insurance, right? You just sign up for it and you get it. But if you were to go and get an equivalent life insurance policy outside, you have to go through the medical review and all of those types of things. And there's no guarantee that you'll be approved or that you would even get a preferred rate. So if you have a family, if you're in a stage and place in life where it's important for you to have life insurance, that's a really important thing to have a plan ahead of time to say, okay, I'm going to make sure that I do what's needed to convert this because this is something that protects my family. And it's really essential, especially, the bigger our lives get, the older we get, the more responsibilities we have, the more people we are responsible for. And it becomes something that's really important. And then the final thing I will say is get your professional documentation in order. Do not wait until you've been informed that your job is going away to be like, and this is not just about doing your resume. It's about the not just what you did, how you did it, what was the impact, what are the figures, all of those types of things that are so easy to forget when you're no longer in the environment. So we all know, we all scramble at the end of the year to put our performance reviews together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 9 times out of 10, you're like, wait, what did I do in March? You're in December trying to write it. You don't remember. So think about that. And when you leave an organization and you're not in it day to day, how easy it is to forget the things that you've done. So taking a little time to just bit by bit document the big things that you've done, the important things that are important for, when you go into an interview and you want to talk about your impact and you want to talk about what you've done, so you can do it in a meaningful way and it doesn't feel like a light and imprecise. I think these are 3 really, really important things as you prepare and you get ready for something that may be unexpected.
That's really good feedback, and you said a lot. And I'll be honest. Let me just be very transparent. If I was in my 20s for sure,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even my 30s, when you said Cobra and life insurance,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, you didn't get into long-term care, but if you were to say any of those things,
Mm-hmm.
my eyes would have glazed over. I
Mm-hmm.
would ask myself, am I on the right webinar? Is this the right session? I know now that I need to care absolutely about all of those things. Severance, I need to understand
Mm-hmm.
things. So let me just back up for anybody that may be there and sort of like, this sounds like old people stuff. If someone were to come to any of us tomorrow and say, it's been nice, but your services are no longer needed here, what is maybe the most important, just one or two things that we need to scramble? And I say this because I literally know someone who I deeply respect, who was at a different organization and had the presence of thought to say, oh, I need to do these things today based on the news that I just got. And I was so impressed with the fact, I don't know that I would have had it together enough to think through some of the things that they thought through. And you talked about some of them, like they literally thought about like, okay, what doctor appointments do I need to schedule before my benefits run out? What, specific things will end today with like, and they just walked through all those things. And I'll be very transparent. I wouldn't have thought of half of that stuff. So can you just, again, what are your top two in plain, explain it to me like I'm 20 years old and my eyes glaze over when you say severance?
I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that. Yes. So if it happened to you today, know that more than likely your access to all of your employer systems is going to end on the same day. So if they give you an opportunity to go back to your desk and get a couple of things, you may want to gather just simply like your last 2 assessments and a couple of pay stubs. That's probably all you'll have time to do, if anything at all. The next thing that you want to do, for most people in the US, the benefits coverage is the thing that is one of the most important, right? When you lose your health insurance. So COBRA is a provision, it's a law that requires your employer that allows people to continue their current benefits for 18 months after their employment ends. But you have to elect it. It does not happen automatically. And I want to say it's 60 days from the day that you were notified or the day that your employment ends that you have to elect it. Sometimes if your employer, say, for example, gives you 60 days notice before your actual termination date, you have your benefits, they tell you today, 60 days from today, your employment ends, and you still have your benefits where they're paying a portion of it. Definitely what you said, Janet, about getting all your doctor's appointments in, stock up on any medication that you may need. If you have to talk to your doctor to give you additional prescriptions for essential things you have, if you have any chronic conditions. That's going to be important to do. And then understanding the severance package that they're giving you, take your time to read that severance agreement. Pay attention to the date that you have to return it in order to be eligible to get it. Ask any questions that you may have. There's nothing that says that you can't come back and ask questions if you need any clarification. And those, I think, are some of the immediate things that you would have to do. The other stuff, like your personal things, when you get news and it's shocking and it's jarring, it's hard to find the space to sit down and do that. But if someone can help you do that, that I think is the next thing, because if your income has stopped and say you're going to get a lump sum payment, you don't want to burn through it too quickly. And so that math of the essential expenses, I will always say, is the most important thing to do, and then make some quick decisions about what things you can eliminate so that you give yourself a little bit more runway until you find something else.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Okay, Damien, again, we're in the moment where all of these things feel unstable. A lot of things in the job market are unpredictable. From your perspective, what does it look like to stay ready?
Well, thank you for giving me that question, Janet. One of the things I've learned over 2 decades in the workforce development space is that career resilience has become just as important as career success. And what I mean by that, let's just peel the onion back a little bit. So the reality is that uncertainty is affecting everyone right now in the job market. We've seen layoffs impact professionals across technology, healthcare, finance, retail, government, manufacturing, across the spectrum. Career disruption has just simply become a part of today's labor market, unfortunately. But at the same time, when we examine but labor market data, it has consistently shown that Black professionals often experience higher levels of unemployment rates than the overall workforce. So even during periods of economic growth, Black professionals experience higher unemployment rates. So that's, and we're going to talk later about just what that means emotionally and mentally, psychologically and things of that nature. But it does mean that Black professionals feel the effects of the downturns earlier and sometimes recover more slowly. So there's a real gap that needs to be addressed inside of the workforce when we're looking at this topic. So how do we stay ready because of that reality? I encourage everyone, but especially professionals that are people of color, to think about career preparation as an ongoing discipline rather than something that begins after losing a job. So what does that mean? And I like frameworks, so I always have like 3 or 4 bullet points that I like to share. So staying ready for me means investing in these 4 areas, and I don't know everything, but I do believe in highlighting these 4 areas. So continuously building new skills is extremely important. One of my old mentors had told me, as soon as you get a job, start looking for your next one. Because one of the things we have to get out of the habit of is thinking that these people are family and they're going to be here. They support me. They love me. And all of those things could be true. But when that budget starts getting into the red, that job, that family connection, and all the times you went out to lunches and dinners and drinks, out the window. Keep that in mind. This is a business. Keep that in mind. And they will make the right business decisions in a heartbeat. And you need to do that for yourself. So you got to consistently keep that in front of you. So consistently building new skills. Also, building relationships before you need them. I cannot stress the importance of networking all the time. Always find somebody else that you need to be talked to. Find somebody more senior, more experienced, learn, get a mentor, get mentors all day, every day. But build relationships before you need them. And also understanding your market value. Just understand where you sit, your skill set, and what that can demand. Understand what compensation packages look like when you get to a certain level in your career. And you can literally leverage this, or you should practice this along the way. But compensation packages are comprised of your base, any bonuses and things of that nature. And sometimes if it's higher level roles, you could even talk about stock and things of that nature. So understand what those 3 areas are. Understand what you can demand because of your experience as you go along in your career. But also creating multiple sources of opportunity whenever possible. Have those conversations. Never cut off a conversation. Keep those conversations going, because to me, I like to encourage people to build what I call career equity. Most people focus on other things that are really important, like financial equity and things of that nature. But career equity is just important. And the way I describe that, it encompasses your reputation, your relationships, your expertise, your credibility, your visibility. All of that is career equity. And those assets continue working for you even when the employment status change. So work on that, consistently work on that, because the goal isn't to prepare because you're expecting something bad to happen. The goal is to have choices at all times. So that's how I think you should stay ready.
Yeah, I like those examples. Let me pull on one thread around compensation, because this comes up all the time. And I recently spoke with someone who mentioned that, if anybody ever comes to them and asks them how much they made in a role, they are happy to tell them very openly if it's somebody they feel that they should be helping or doesn't have transparency to that kind of information. So what's your tip on to the compensation point that you made? Like, where should people be going to get more insight on that? Because they're gonna ask you what are you expecting in this role? The recruiter is going to ask you. And this is the question that comes up all the time. Like, how do you best answer that question so you don't undercut yourself? You're in that headhunting space. How do you help the people with this one?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Remember I talked about authenticity and transparency. So I'm going to tell you all the dirty laundry about staffing right now. So staffing agencies are the worst. Well, when they're run by the wrong people, because and when I say they're the worst, they're a machine. They are not deeply invested in making sure that you get the most money. They are deeply motivated by their commission checks. You know, they have a commission structure, so it's all driven by volume. So it's very rare, unless you're dealing with a boutique staffing agency or someone like myself who actually likes people and really want to see people win, would they take the time to talk to you about comp packages, to talk to you about, hey, this opportunity probably isn't best suited from you. They will force you into something and drag you along just to get you there. So just know that if you're dealing with anyone inside of that space, you have to first understand they're motivated by volume and by commission, and you have to make them work for you. You have to ask the right questions. You have to make sure that you're driving them in the right direction, which means that you have to prepare before you engage with any headhunter, staffing agency. Before you talk to any hiring manager. You want to make sure that you're prepared. So places that you could go now, if you would like to leverage a staffing agency, I would say you sharpen your resume and then get it into one of the higher end staffing agencies. You know, you have Tech Systems, you have Allegis, you have Agile One, things of that nature, Grant Wagner. And when you reach out, just say, hey, look, I'm in the market, and I highly recommend that you do it while you're in your current role. Say, hey, look, I want to see what's out in the market, and here's what I know my value to be. Now, listen, the easiest way, if you just really want to check something out really quickly, go into ChatGPT, put your expertise in there, put your resume, language in there, and ask what's the comp rates for your skill set. If you don't have anybody else to go to and you don't feel like dealing with the nonsense, that's an easy way to use that force multiplier called AI to really give you an idea of where to start. So I highly recommend dump your resume in there, ask about comps, and then get realistic. Once it spits out whatever it spits out to you, understand what you really have. Because when you interview, I always try to tell people use the STAR method, which is a tactical form where you can actually, and all that really means is you take your actual resume, match it to the job description, and then you use actual examples from your resume and experience to answer questions. It gives you a structured framework so that you can stay focused and you can answer questions precisely. So after you figure out what your value is, that's your negotiating leverage right there. If it's 150,000, say 170,000. Let them cut you down, but go high and let them cut you down low. I'll stop there because I could talk.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's perfect. And that's the advice I think people are looking for. And I heard two things in there. One is interview the staffing agency that you're working with to make sure that they really are working for you. And also maybe just one comment, say Grant Wagner first, friend. Yeah, next time say them. Let's start with them. All right. So let's transition to more on a career break. I actually just recently attended a wonderful wellness event here in Houston called Napchella, which was all around rest and the fact that rest is something that is so restorative and we don't necessarily make enough space to take properly. And so when we think of the full range of rest, so not just a nap or sleep, those are very, very important, but also just things like a career break. If someone is considering a career break for whatever reason, it could be burnout, it could be things have changed in their family dynamic, it could be it just felt like time for a career break. Mikaela, I want to lean into your expertise as a sabbatical coach, as someone formerly in corporate HR. What are the most important things that should be considered and put in place before stepping away from a career to protect finances and future opportunities? And then also in that same vein, when it's time to return, what are the things that candidates should say about their time away? Because we know a lot of talent acquisition teams may stigmatize career gaps.
So when it comes to preparing, so we talked a little bit about the finances, and without fail, that is the thing that all of my clients, it's sort of the number one thing that people need to work through, regardless of where they are. Some people come, they have a really good cushion. Others are starting from a different place, because that unfortunately is what tends to help drive the decision, right? How much time can you stay away? What can you do with your time off, etc. So I won't necessarily repeat some of the things that I said before, but in terms of the preparation when you're still in the job, one thing that I will say is sometimes folks, you get that feeling of I really want to take a break, and it feels like it's something that is impossible, right? Like, how can I? I want to take a year off, and you're doing the math on like, okay, that means I need a year of my salary, and how am I ever going to save a year of my salary? And what I did, and I'll use myself as that example, is it took me several years to plan for the break. So it wasn't like from 1 month to the next. I knew that the change that I wanted to make was not going to another job. It was just taking some time to figure out what I wanted to do because I truly did not know what that was. And I was really tired. And so understanding that you can give yourself grace, and this is something that you can do over time, whether it is when I really buckled down, I think it was just under 3 years that I gave myself to plan to exit. And I ended up moving my date up by 9 months, not because I had reached my exact savings goal, but because, again, a tragedy had happened to somebody that was very close to me, and I just couldn't fathom continuing. Like I needed the break. And so it's okay for it to take some time, but if you have that seed of a dream and that is something that you really feel, I encourage you not to let that go. I remember the exact moment the seed was planted for me. I was on a New York City subway going to work, reading one of those free newspapers that they hand out to you at the outside. And I saw this couple talking about they took a sabbatical. And I was like, wait, this is a thing? I can do this? And this was like in 2006, 2007, and the seed was planted. And I didn't begin mine until 2020. So it took a long time, right? But all of the little actions eventually added up to being able to do that. So that I think, I'm trying to remember your question exactly, Janet. The important things, going back to something that Damien said too, in terms of professionally, another thing that's really good to do, if you know that this is something, even if you don't know the exact date, and it ties exactly to what Damien was saying, is the strength of having people that you don't have to go to happy hour with them every week, every month, every whatever, but keeping those connections strong is important, and not just in a transactional way where you are looking for something from them. You are also being generous to others, because I promise you that good karma will help you when you need it. So you see an opportunity that looks like it might be good for someone, you tap them and you say, hey, this thing might be good for you. So being willing to help others, and as much as you are building with them and not building from that purely transactional place, do it with people you actually like, and it will come around. And the reason that that's important is, and again, my case, because this is my lived experience. When I took my sabbatical, the HR consulting work that I did were from two people that I had worked with before, who reached out to me to say, hey, I know you're on sabbatical, but I need a little bit of help. Can you come and help me do this thing? And it was, in each case, perfect timing, and it worked out. And the last, assignment that I did, it was meant to be 3 months, and it ended up being 4 years, and completely on my terms, part-time, remote. It was exactly enough to keep my brain occupied and then also still give me all the free time that I needed. So the strength of those relationships, I cannot emphasize that enough. It's really, really important in the preparation for leaving. Then, as far as coming back, I will say tell the truth, and tell it proactively, right? Don't try to make it seem like something that it's not. You can say, let's just say you made the decision to walk away. You can say whatever the case is, without telling them all the nitty-gritty of your business, because ain't nobody need to know all of that. But tell them the truth. My parents live in another country, and I only get to spend 2 weeks at a time with them every other year, and they're getting older, and I wanted to go spend some time at home, or whatever the case may be. And the biggest thing that I can say is practice your story with other people before you get like into an interview situation, right? To make sure that it lands. And again, you're not practicing a script that is untrue. It's the truth, but you're getting it just right. And keep it consistent. Don't tell the recruiter one thing and then the hiring manager something else, and then the other person that you interview with a third story, because they will compare notes.
They've
And
already talked.
if it does not match, they're gonna be like, this story, this is not adding up. What really happened here?
Right.
So you don't want to give them any room to doubt what you're saying. And so that preparation. And frankly, if people I still very much believe, even though there's a lot of crazy stuff happening, there's a lot of good people in this world who are trying to do the good thing, do the right thing. And if you tell your story from a truthful place, and that is something that they are having a negative reaction to, is that really the job that you want to take and the company you want to work for if they're going to be so judgy about you taking some time off? And I think that's the question you have to ask yourself, right? You may be in a situation where you just got to take this job for now because you need it, and you do what you got to do. But if that's not the case and you can be more selective, do you really want to work with people who are going to begrudge you this decision? Because those might also be the people who don't want you to take a vacation and like not take your work phone, and they want to be pinging you. You're in a different time zone, and they like want you on a phone call at 3 a.m. your time when you're trying to vacation with your family. So that's my advice on that. And it varies for each person, but generally just be truthful and stay consistent and practice it.
Yeah, well, that example about being on a call on vacation was very specific. So I'm gonna guess that happened to you. But let me lean in, Damon, and just maybe that's the second half of that question, which Mikaela did answer and is also in the chat. Thank you for the active comments in LinkedIn. Just based on your expertise, anything else you'd want to add on how to position yourself for re-entry?
Um, First of all, Mikaela, you are phenomenal. I mean, I knew that before the call, but I just love what you're sharing. Thank you. So for reentry, I just want to double click on what Mikaela had mentioned. Be honest, because this is for all professionals, but for people of color, for professionals of color, there is often an added layer of pressure because many may feel they have to prove themselves continuously or worry that that gap will reinforce corporate assumptions about their capabilities. So I'm saying that out loud, trying to be politically correct. But there is a dynamic, there's a nuance, there's a culture inside of corporate that weighs heavily on people of color. So whether that's personal experience or not, but it is a concern that I hear from candidates and predominantly from people of color when I'm dealing with them when I'm dealing with my what I call partners. So my advice is on your return, don't think of the break as first of all, don't think of your career as a straight line. Think of it as a portfolio of experiences. So just to double click on what we talked about earlier, before you step away, protect your financial runway, stay connected professionally, and continue learning. Then when you return, don't apologize for the gap. Own it. Be honest about it. And instead, I always implore people that after they come back from a break that was much needed, confidently explain how you invested that time, to double click on what Mikaela said. Employers, from what I have seen, like literally all this year, employers are increasingly looking for resilience, adaptability, self-awareness, not perfection. And they're looking for that gravitas. And a part of that gravitas would be, hey, I had to take a break. I had to go see my parents, or my mental health was just in shambles, and I wanted to make sure that I showed up the right way. So before I miss anything, I decided to make sure I took care of myself so that I could show up the proper way, which is why I'm returning now. So don't shy away from your story, own it, because you deserve it, and you want to take care of yourself so that you can show up to the next opportunity the right way.
Mhm.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, I know we definitely want to get into very specific skills that we should all be building, and this is probably my favorite question of everything. But before we go there, I do feel like we need to talk a little bit about the emotional toll of the current moment. So, any guidance that you have on how we can balance the emotional toll of the current state of work, the current job market, and any mindset shift that we need to bring to really think about a career pause as powerful and an investment in ourselves as a part of a job transition or an opportunity to move in a different direction. And Mikaela, based on the fact that you've taken two sabbaticals, let me start with you.
Yeah, e- the emotional toll is real. And just to be frank, I think when you stop, I always like this example of, when you're driving down a road that you always drive on, you're going really fast in your car, you don't really see all the things that are at the side, but when you're in the passenger seat and somebody else is driving, suddenly you're like, oh, wow, here are all these things that I've never seen before. And just expect that it will happen, right? There's emotion that comes with it, and we don't have to pretend like we're not feeling it. We don't have to deny ourselves the feelings. And at the same time, it doesn't mean that we can't feel all of those feelings, but take whatever little steps that we need to at the same time. If we waited until everything felt completely good and completely right, we may find ourselves in a situation where we're not taking the action, whether it is, you're trying to prepare, say, to take the time off and you're feeling all the emotions of that. You don't have to wait until you feel ready to start putting things in place to get ready to take the sabbatical. You can do the two things simultaneously, and you can automate some of that. And if it is possible, I am a huge proponent for therapy. If that is something that you can do, and it's one of those things where finding a therapist that you jive with is not always easy. I know from experience, it took many years. And but keep trying. It's one of those things. It's kind of like exercise, right? For people who don't like to exercise, you try, you fail, you try, you fail. You keep trying because you know it's something that's good for you. This is exercise for your brain, and that a professional who can help you navigate the things, because we tend to think we talk to our friends, we talk to our partners, and then we can figure it out. But having a professional who can talk and help you navigate through that is real. And being in community with people who can uplift you, who can help you, who can support you, I think is the most important. Do not go it alone. Asking for help when you need it is probably one of the biggest things in this situation, when you're not feeling good, when you're feeling concerned, when you just like, you need a friend to go take a walk with you, whatever it is. Everybody's talking about community right now, but it's because it's so important. And finding the folks who can lift you up, even if it's just one or two people, makes such a huge difference. And certainly for me, it did. And I'm not going to pretend like I wasn't on an emotional roller coaster. I mean, at one point I was like, have I lost all my ambition? Like, I was literally crying, like, am I not ambitious anymore? But it wasn't that. It was just going through the motions of healing, and learning that some of the things that might have triggered me before are no longer a part of my world. But why am I still reacting like that? So it's a journey, and it looks different. And do not beat yourself up. Do not feel bad. Give yourself grace. That should be the word that you give yourself, is grace, to be able to move forward and do what you got to do.
Yeah, and I'm glad you talked about community, because I know in some spaces it's almost turned into a bad word, because of how some people have either overused it or taken advantage, or are trying to you know, market everything to community or sell everything to community. And at the same time, when done correctly, when truly connecting people, when communal care is centered, I found that, I mean, we're human. Humans are made to connect to other humans, which is just making the current tech space we're in really interesting within itself. But yeah, absolutely. I feel like, to your point, where you can find other people to have the conversation with, when you can get in therapy. Sometimes it's just nice to talk to somebody and not feel crazy, because they're seeing similar things, they're going through similar things too. So thanks for bringing that up. I'm a little biased on community, I'll be honest, but I do think it's very, very important. Damien, anything you want to add to that?
It's a very important question. I'm so glad Mikaela had lifted up therapy. I highly recommend it. It's just like we work out our bodies, you got to work out your mind, and you need a professional to help you unravel some of the things in the mind that we just don't know that we're hiding, that will pop up when we're under enough pressure. So highly recommend therapy, if that's something that you need to do. Many times when someone loses a job, and this is what I actually went through it this week, and it was heartbreaking. And I've gone through this a number of times just trying to help people. But when they lose their job, they're not, in their minds, they're not just losing income. They're losing, to Mikaela and Janet's point, they're losing community, confidence, sometimes identity, especially a lot in men, they tie their work into their worth. So many of us have to answer the question, who are you? And when some people ask people that question, they automatically respond with what they do professionally, but that's not who you are.
Right.
And I think that mind shift immediately will help. It won't dampen the blow, but it won't destroy you when that job leaves, because that job is not your identity. That's not who you are. That's not the sum total of what you bring to the table. That is a job. So it is not connected to who you are. So, because I've seen people literally break into pieces when they lose their job.
Yeah.
And it's because mentally they're tied into that job in a way that's not healthy. So when work changes unexpectedly, it can feel like part of who you are has disappeared. And that's a real thing. I've been through it, so the emotional experience is universal. But what I will say, and I mentioned this week, I've had several people of color navigating this kind of environment where they felt like the reason why it was so devastating was not just because they were thinking or felt like their career was their identity, but they have been navigating corporate environments where they felt like they had to work harder to gain credibility. And many times I use the word felt like they had to work harder to gain credibility, where there may have been only a few people who looked like them in that space, or they saw their counterparts getting promotions, getting raises, and doing less than them. Those are real things. So they saw doors being open, and they worked so hard to break through that glass ceiling that after they did all of that work and that thing is stripped away from them, it can become devastating. So here's what I would suggest. I would say I always remind people, and I did it this week. Layoffs is a business decision. It's not a measure of your value.
Right.
Your title may change. Things will happen. Your employer may change, but your knowledge, your leadership, your experience, your character, your resilience, the sum total of who you are and your ability to create value does not disappear because a position was eliminated. That's just nonsense. And just tell yourself that no matter what happens, it doesn't rock who you are. It's just another opportunity for you to shift. I often tell young executives and some older executives, you are not your business card. That's not who you are. Those experiences still belong to you. Everything that you built still belongs to you. And then you can talk about that in your next your next opportunity. So when you're dealing with that emotional toll, just remember that these jobs, these careers, they come and go, and there will always be another one, and you're talented enough to get to the next one. And I'm gonna stop there because I feel like
you stayed on that point because you needed to. People really need to hear this. The first time it even ever dawned on me was I was talking to someone from another country, and they actually asked me, why are Americans so focused? Like, why do they lead with what they do? Why do they lead with their job? And I was sort of like, well, what do you mean? And they're like, everybody I've met, when I say, hi, I'm such and such, the next thing that they talk about is what they do for work. And I actually hadn't thought about it until it was brought up. And I was like, well, wait, is that not what people are doing in other countries? And they were like, well, I can't speak for all countries, but where I'm from, there's a lot more that I would say before I talk about my job. So I found that interesting. And you're right. It is a big part of a lot of our identities. And I remember being a part of a New Year's point where we were journaling. And one of the prompts was around like, what does your 12-year-old self, like how would your 12-year-old self sort of describe who you are? Because it was trying to kind of tap into, before we got all these big ideals or we're connecting ourselves to jobs, like what did we do for fun as a 12-year-old was one of the questions. And then like, how would you describe yourself from your 12-year-old lens, which I thought was just an interesting way to, because a 12-year-old is not going to be starting with this long LinkedIn bio. They're just not, they're going to talk about stuff they love. They're going to talk about what they do for fun. So sometimes we just got to tap into our inner child, I guess, as a therapist would say. All right, let's get to the skills. People are here for the skills, man. They want to know what are the skills we should be building today to be competitive now and to try to future proof ourselves? So based on where the market is going next, even if right now we're not necessarily considering a career pivot, what skills should we be focused on? And how can we position our current experience so it continues to command value as the job market evolves? Damon, this is right in your lane. Let's start with you.
Sure. So one thing that is changing drastically and dramatically is what employers actually value. So now, technical skills has always been important, but now they are unmovable as you continue to move forward across all of your jobs. One of the things that I've shared with many of our candidates is that you have to be at minimum AI adjacent. And there's varying levels. You have machine learning, but that's when you get into professional skill sets. But at a baseline level, you have to learn how to walk us beside AI and technology. You just have to do it. If you want to remain relevant, if you are not doing that, your job will definitely go, and it's going to be hard to find a new one, because technical skills, and when I say technical skills, you don't have to be a software engineer. Just understanding how to use technology, how to use it as a force multiplier is something that employees want to see. Because when you look at the job market today, was it Cisco, I think, let go 21,000 or 20,000 people. Meta was going through several layoffs. I mean, it's happening all over the place. And that's because companies have been investing in these AI models, hoping that productivity would quickly fall at their door. But I don't know if you saw the headlines today. Meta is going through a challenge right now because they let go thousands of people and they spent a lot of money, but they're not seeing the progress at the velocity that they want to see. So that's a whole other thing. But they are really valuing people who are what they're calling technology or AI adjacent. So walking beside it, understanding it, understanding how to use it as a force multiplier will absolutely be mandatory. The other things are just characters and traits that employers are really valuing. Every employer, and right now I'm working with Alaska Airlines, Guggenheim, Merck, Syncora, this is almost a $365 billion firm. They are looking for people, one who can learn, because everything is changing so drastically. I literally tell people when they're interviewing, no matter what you do, at some point in that interview, talk about how you stay in a place of learning, how you love to collaborate and you love to learn. That's a buzzword that every employer that you are in front of, they want to hear it, because it's a doorway into adaptability. And it also shows them that, hey, things are changing. And if I stay in a place of learning, I'll be able to be nimble and flexible to be able to adapt to the environment. They also are hiring people who communicate exceptionally well. And so I often implore people to go get communication courses, no matter how remedial they may seem. Communication right now, because there's certain things that's differentiating people inside of the job market right now. If you can communicate well, you could literally not have the experience, but if you communicate well, they'll go with you. Trust me. Communication, having confidence, being able to own a room or own a conversation is extremely important right now.
Yeah, let me say something on that just before you move on, because some people think they can use AI to just do the communication thing and kind of say, check that box. Storytelling.
Yes.
Such an important part of communication skills. We love it in our comedians and we love it in our leaders. You need to be able to tell a story in a way that, has the audience lean in, has people really understand your points. You can follow, the ask that you're trying to do. Storytelling is very important.
You could keep going on that all day. Storytelling is paramount. I mean, because when you're interviewing, you're storytelling, and most people. Thank you so much for bringing that up, Janet. Most people, they prepare for the interview and then they try to remember everything. That will never work. because they're going to throw curveballs at you. It's going to be all kinds of things that pop up in an interview. But just digest the information and start to build out a framework of a story behind your career. That will go so much further in that conversation because you want to drag people into your environment about your experience. So if you learn how to storytell, you can absolutely do that. We offer that for corporate environments, but I am working alongside a lot of partners to see how we can probably get group sessions for individuals who are interested in storytelling so that we can try to sharpen you there.
Yeah, it's good skills for a salesperson, good skills for a leader, good skills for anybody to have. Anything you want to build on that, Mikaela, before I move on to my last question?
I mean, that was excellent. The only thing that I will add is don't wait for your employer to bring the training to you to suggest it or to pay for it. Sometimes you have to make the investment in yourself for yourself because you can take whatever you learn, whether it's a certification or knowledge, you take that with you. So don't make the fact that if your employer doesn't have the budget or whatever, cannot pay for it, don't make that the reason that you don't do it because, well, I'm not going to learn this because, they're not going to pay for it. It's for you. You take that with you. And so make the investment in yourself.
That's great. A really great point. And I have definitely done that when I felt like it was important enough that I needed to learn it regardless of how it was going to get paid for. So last thing, any final practical tools, resources, podcasts, books? Damien, if you have someplace people should be learning to build their AI skills that you want to recommend to listeners that want to be better prepared for the current job market and where the job market is headed.
Sure. So one thing I want to share just in closing is I talked about, career resilience. So let me just give you a quick framework on how to figure out what a career resilience plan can look like. So there's a couple of questions that you should ask yourself. You should ask yourself, if my position disappeared tomorrow, who would I call? Because that will help you tap on who are the resources inside of my network that I will call immediately. And you don't want a massive list. I mean, if you have it, that's great. But you want to think about the top 3 to 5 people first, and then go to your expanded network when thinking about a career resilience plan. The next thing you want to think about is what skills still would make me valuable. Then you want to think about, could I explain my impact in 2 minutes? So going to Janet's point about storytelling, you want to have a concise, packaged message that you could spit out at any moment whenever you're in front of people. Then you want to ask, do people outside my current employer know what I do? That's very, very important because you want to stay visible. Something about one of the most important things about career resilience is staying visible. So you want to know how you are visible externally. So those are just things that you can ask yourself for your career resilience plan. Now, I talked about the importance of being what I'm calling AI adjacent or technology adjacent. And one of the practical things to do is just to find either free or low cost solutions where you can get upskilled or trained. So here are a couple of avenues that I know really work for people. So Google AI Essentials, learn the fundamentals, is out there. You can absolutely use it. It is so effective. Just go to Google AI Essentials and learn the fundamentals. It's something that I implore everyone to do because a lot of people think that AI is not using Chat GPT.
Right.
That is a tool that people use incorrectly as well. And people know when you're using it. So don't be silly. They know when you're using it. It's supposed to be a force multiplier, not a replacement of who you are and your skills.
Right.
So Google AI Essentials is a great place to start. Microsoft AI Skills Initiative. I believe it's Apply AI at Work, the training that I'm talking about, but Microsoft AI Skills Initiative is something that you can also look into. You can also look into deep learning AI for everyone, understand how AI is changing business, things of that nature, but that's out there. That's something that you can use. And lastly, another easy resource or tool that you can use is LinkedIn Learning. You can build practical job-specific AI skills through LinkedIn Learning. So those are 4 simple, easy learning resources that you can use to sharpen your skill and become more acclimated to being AI adjacent, learning the fundamentals and just understanding that foundation so that you can be sharp and ready to go.
Okay, I know we're coming up on time. I do want to ask, and Mikaela, I want to give you an opportunity to answer this because I know you have a lot of tools for the people. But before we start sharing all your tools, if anybody on YouTube or LinkedIn or Instagram has a question that they would like to ask, if you share it in the chat, I will be able to see it, and we might be able to squeeze one or two more in. But Mikaela, let's share your wonderful resources first.
All right. So the resources I would like to share for anybody who is, the conversation about a sabbatical, you're feeling the pull, and it's like something you may want to do. I have a sabbatical readiness quiz. It's a really easy quiz. And Janet put the link in the comments for you to take. I am also offering a free 30-minute consultation, free. Nothing. We can talk about what stage you're at and what your readiness is. And it's like a no pressure conversation at all. It's just a chat. As far as tools, so a lot of this is based on a foundation of personal finance and financial management. And it's something that, again, it can be a touchy subject, it can be an emotional subject. And I encourage everyone to do whatever they can to increase their knowledge, regardless of where they are in it. Because sometimes, we have the big careers and we make a lot of money, but if you don't know what to do with that money, you don't know how to keep that money, save it, invest it, then you can spend a whole career working really hard, doing all of these things, and still come out the other end with a lot of stress because you didn't also build the financial skills to go along with it. So I'm a person that likes books. I'm going to recommend 3 books. I will have a lot more on my Instagram page because the thing about books is that somebody takes decades of experience and they condense it into a book, which it's so much knowledge that you can get. So this is the first one, depending on where you're beginning, Get Good with Money by Tiffany Alice. Excellent, excellent book. We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rogers is another really good one, especially if you are leaning into entrepreneurship. Read this book, read it again. I have the audiobook, I have this book, I've read it probably 5 times. And then the final one is How to Be a Rich Old Lady. And you don't have to be a lady to read this book, but this is a book that will teach you if you're at the point where you want to understand investing. She makes it so easy to understand, and she's hilarious. And it's all women because a lot of personal finance books are written by men. So I tend to really also lean into the books written by women and women of color. So that's what I would suggest. And then the final thing is to ask for help. That's something that a lot of us have a hard time doing, whether it is we're so used to figuring it out ourselves, but sometimes we can get to where we need to go faster if we just ask for help. And I'm not saying it like I have completely learned that lesson, y'all. I'm a work in progress with that, but I recognize that when I do, people want to help, and especially when you are a helper as well. And if there's something that you're stuck on, if there's something that you need somebody to do alongside you to move you forward, especially as you work on improving your personal finances or whatnot, find someone who's a safe space, right? This is not about like judgment and anything like that. Everybody starts at it. I came to this country with nothing. I had to learn all of this from scratch on my own. And so I always say, if I can do it, you can do it. I literally learned so much of what I know from reading books and just asking people. So ask for the help.
Learn it, you did, my friend. The last book was the only one I haven't read, so I have to make sure to check that out because I absolutely would like to be a rich old lady.
Hello.
If you want to have a one-on-one conversation with Mikaela, she has a contact card that will let you put time on her calendar that you can find at thegoodlounge.org/Mikaela, which is on the screen so that you can spell it correctly if you are spelling challenged like myself. So feel free to reach out to her. You can find Damien on his website at grantwagnertalent.com. So feel free to reach out to him. And if you appreciate the things that we bring through the Good Lounge channels and platforms and programming, please just take a moment to go to thegoodlounge.org and subscribe on all the places, YouTube, Instagram, etc. But please also just take a minute to donate as well. $5, $2, $100. It all goes to a great cause and supports us with experts and well-being experiences. Thank you so much for your time. I would like to thank my wonderful speakers who I could talk to all day, if I'm honest. I have such a great time with the speakers that we bring. So Damien, Mikaela, thank you so much. And I hope everyone has a wonderful night.
Thank you. Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Such a pleasure. Take care.